Welcome, everyone. Welcome, pigeons and doves and humans. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Compassion Consortium Sunday service. I'm Reverend Sarah Bowen, an animal chaplain and interspecies minister. And I'm joined today by co-founders Reverend William Melton, Reverend Erica Allison, and Victoria Moran. And as always, we're grateful for Phil, who's driving and is about to put away the pigeons. Yes, and the doves. Thank you, Phil. I'd also like to give a hearty shout out to any of the members of our advisory board that are here today and our guest speakers, and a warm welcome to all of you. We meet the fourth Sunday of every month, and we hope to see you often. I'm speaking to you today from Pulaski County, Virginia, on the fringes of what is now called the Jefferson National Forest, the land cherished by the Tutelo and the Montanon. And this forest is home to at least 55 species of mammals, ranging from the white-tailed deer to rare species such as the water shrew and the rock vole, though I have yet to find them. 27 of the plants and animals that are 27 of the plant and animal species that are found here are listed as threatened or endangered. So I want to just take a moment to acknowledge any of the threatened and endangered plants and animals where I am and where you might be as you're arriving, just to feel the gravity of that. Today, after I offer a few opening words, Jack Harkins will share our community tenets of agreement. Reverend William has another song of compassion for us. We'll experience interspecies spiritual practice with Erica Allison and see who she is bringing into the room from the more than human world today. Victoria is going to interview Keith Akers, who is here. And I'm going to learn if it's Keith Akers or Akers very soon.
It's Akers.
Akers, thank you so much. I saw someone's face go, and I thought, Keith Akers. And then we'll hear a story of compassion in action with Marian Haley Moss. Then we'll open up the chat to engage in a group blessing ritual, which is based on an interspecies nativity scene today. And then we'll joyfully move our bodies with another one of Reverend Erica Allison's chosen dance hits. Finally, we will join in some fellowship around some interesting questions today. Throughout the service, please do whatever it is that helps you feel comfortable, whatever makes you best able to participate and to take in what we're offering today. Another deep breath. Over the last 2 months, plentiful holy days and holidays of our various spiritual traditions have engaged many of us in reflection. And the season is not over. Kwanzaa starts today. And for those of us on the Gregorian calendar, a new year is about to flip over on our calendars. During this time, open to reflection and contemplation and all of that juicy stuff, I've been thinking about the history and the future of this community. About a year ago, the seeds were planted, and in April, a lot of you started coming to join us for these Sunday services. And along the way, we've heard you add your voices. Some of you have read the Tenets of Agreement, or you've shared how you put compassion in action with us. During our after the service fellowship time, you've shared with each other. You've shared with us. We have noodled through some very tough topics that come up when we are living lives of compassion and nonviolence. You've also shared the joys of your advocacy work and the small and not so small victories on behalf of the more than human world. You've emailed us to tell us this time is valuable for you that we spend together, that you feel comfortable here, that it helps deepen your spirituality, that it helps inspire your work outside of this community. And so clearly we're not wasting our time. We're delighted to be here with you every fourth Sunday of the month. And so I was thinking about these emails and these comments, and what does this mean? What does this mean to this community? And the word that came up for me was belonging. Now, the Gospel of Webster offers that the definition of belonging is an affinity for a place or a situation. On the other hand, the Gospel of Wikipedia offers us a different definition. Belongingness is the human emotional need to be an accepted member of a group, whether it is family, friends, coworkers, a religion, or something else. People tend to have an inherent desire to belong and to be an important part of something greater than themselves. In these two definitions, there is a nuanced difference, isn't there? Webster speaks of one's own sense of belonging. Wikipedia speaks of the desire to be accepted, to belong. And all too often, I hear belonging spoken of in that permission-based way, that someone has to fulfill a set of criteria in order to belong. I'm also struck that the word belonging can be problematic for another sense for people who advocate for animals and for the earth, because it has also been used to mean property. This land belongs to me. This animal belongs to me. And it's used in trivial situations too, in a sense of what belongs to who. That guy took my seat. That lady got my job. On the flip side, we might take comfort in the word belonging. We might say that we belong to God, or that we belong to the universe, or we belong to a family, or we belong to a community. Indeed, I think the basis of and the foundation for any religion or spiritual tradition is belonging to a community which has gathered around a shared set of values. And so belonging, like many words we've talked about this year, is a messy, messy word. Last April, when William and Victoria and Eric and I co-founded this community with the help of many others, we wanted to offer spiritual guidance, support, and fellowship to vegans, vegetarians, animal rights activists, animal lovers, and all humans who care about and advocate for animals and the planet. As we say often, and as it says on our website, that is our mission. And it's detailed in the Tenets of Agreement, which you're going to hear in just a few moments. We crafted Sunday services that include elements of traditional worship services and also the opportunity for you to personally express faith and gratitude and celebration to the degree that you feel comfortable with and in the ways that feel comfortable to you. And we did so because we wanted to create a sacred space here for people who share a conviction that all living kind and the planet itself deserve respect and justice and loving kindness. And so coming up to the new year, we've begun to think about what's next. And what has come to me is the vision of a Rorschach test. You know those black and white ink blots that look like nothing and look like everything at the same time? In 1917, psychiatrist Hermann Rorschach was working in a remote Swiss asylum and developed his first set of these, the ones that we know today. He was influenced not only by Freud and Jung, but also the art movements of Futurism and Dadaism. Rorschach came to believe that who we are is less than a matter of what we say than what we see. His inkblots were an attempt to synthesize art and science. And although the accuracy of his tests has been criticized, as most things are, his suggestion that who we are is less a matter of what we verbalize than our perspective has stayed with me. It's salient beyond art and science to spirituality. And I'm hoping that it's going to be a useful spiritual practice for us today as we ponder the topic of belonging and the related topic of membership. Because many organizations spend a lot of time creating detailed plans of membership levels from the top down. And with more funding, you get more things. And yet, our 4 co-founders are keen to the entangled unfairness of resources in the United States and in the world in general, and also what's going on for all of you in the time of pandemic. And so we're a bit leery to create that type of structure. On the other hand, some organizations create structures which provide membership based on participation and service. And yet we're also aware that many of you belong to or lead other organizations, including environmental nonprofits and animal sanctuaries and vegan education groups. You are working on food injustice and poverty. You're combating the exploitation of animals and of children and of other marginalized groups. You're working to end racism and sexism and classism and ableism and ageism and heterosexism. And did I miss any of the isms? All of those. Speciesism. Many of us are working on ending speciesism, or at least calling attention to it first. So we don't want to create barriers to belonging for the time pressed either. So in sum, we want all of you to show up as fully as you can, in the ways that you can, when you can. And at the same time, we want to provide opportunities for this community to thrive and grow. And for those of you who want to get more deeply involved with us, to do so. We have a few ideas percolating, and we're going to tell you about them in January. And yet, we also want to include you, the members of this community, who belong within that visioning. So to wrap up, I invite you to really tune in today to the Tenets of Agreement, to listen to them as Jack reads them. And then as you watch today's Song of Compassion, it will have 3 questions within it. As you read those questions, feel free to jot down anything that comes up for you. Any little aha moment or any thought. Like Rorschach's ink blots, each of our responses to these questions is going to be varied. We may each see different things we hope to receive from and give to this community. But by sharing them with each other, we can all truly belong. So during our fellowship time, we'll share with each other. We ask you to share your ideas with us. And if you can't stick around, email us at compassionconsortium@gmail.com.org. William, help me. .com or
.org.
.org. Thank you, William. I turned 50, folks, and all of a sudden I'm losing the end of my sentences and the end of my words. Compassion Consortium. No, it's compassionconsortium@gmail.com, and our website is compassionconsortium.org. There we go, folks. We are so delighted you are here. I'm so glad you shared one of my senior moments with me. We're glad you continued to join us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to William for the reading of the tenets.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was beautiful. So now is a time when we have the reading of our Tenets of Agreement, and today they will be read by Jack Harkins. Now, Jack is a lifelong spiritual seeker, 40 years as a committed Catholic, 10 years as an Episcopalian, 5 years as a Lutheran, 10 years a committed UU, and the last 5 years in search of an association or fellowship that preaches a vegan gospel. And we hope that he will have found his home finally here at the Compassion Consortium. Ironically, while living on his friend's dairy farm in 2006, he had an experience that led him to begin eating as a vegetarian. And by 2013, he has transitioned to a vegan lifestyle. So he's retired from careers as a mental health counselor and a US postal worker. He currently lives with his wife, Diane, and cat, Nittany, at McGraw House in Ithaca, New York, where his guilty pleasure is spending too much time on Facebook. Jack.
So the Tenets of Agreement, the Compassion Consortium, we acknowledge a divine force at the heart of the universe and in all living things. We may refer to this force as God, but it is known by many names and appears in different forms or as formless. We recognize the common moral principles inherent within all wisdom traditions. We affirm that compassion, reverence for life, and nonviolence are fundamental to religious faith and moral philosophy and are to be extended to all sentient beings. We stand by the principles of inclusion, diversity, and equality, and hold these are essential in our human relations. We hold that non-human animals are imbued with the same essence of life and love as our human animals, that there is moral parity between us. We avow that humans do not own the earth, its resources, or its inhabitants, but instead must be involved in their protection and care. We endeavor to eat and live in a kind and sustainable manner, moving away from animal foods and animal-derived clothing, as well as any activities that cause harm to our fellow beings, human or otherwise. We aim to provide spiritual comfort, fellowship, and food for thought for those participating or exploring a vegan lifestyle. We offer guidance and peer support for all those seeking a more compassionate and spiritual life. And finally, we commit to sharing these principles freely with humility and respect in support of non-human animals and the earth.
Thank you very much, Jack.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, William. The spiritual practice for today is in the same thread. We're going to be looking at what I'm calling calm in the chaos. And just a little heads up before we turn the video on, if you do have any other beings in your house that are sensitive to bird noises, there are some pretty loud bird noises on this particular meditation that we're about to do together. So just a quick heads up to either lower your video or prepare those around you. This video, this meditation we're going to be doing together, this interspecies practice, is called Calm in the Chaos. And the intention here is to just learn how to cultivate our own ability to come back to stillness, come back to center, regardless of what the holidays bring, regardless of what this new year will bring for us. It's to help develop our capacity to just be that pillar of light, that beacon of love, regardless of what's going on around us. And we can learn a lot about this from our friends in the hen house. So Phil, if you'll cue up our video, and I'll just invite everyone while the video is coming up to find a comfortable position. Allow yourself to just relax a bit. And Phil, if you want to go ahead and play that. And just a quick thank you to Unity Farm Sanctuary where this was filmed. So just settling into your seat. Looking in the scenario here. Just feeling into your breath. Feeling into your intentions for what this future next year might bring. And knowing that there are moments coming that will be full of love and belonging and connection. And also knowing that there might be some moments that are a little more chaotic. Just preparing ourselves now to be able to be that sense of calm. Sense of stillness and presence. Even when things might go a little bit out of control or different than the way you might have expected them to go. Just knowing that you have the capacity within you to be open-hearted presence. To come back to your center. To just shine love and peace. Regardless of what the next year may bring. Stepping into whatever silence you can cultivate, despite what's going on around you. Feeling the peace and the calmness that lives within you. And just as we bring our spiritual practice for today to a close, coming in to your own heart, just acknowledging yourself, the being that you've been in the world this year, and the intentions that you have going forward into this new year with love and compassion. And so it is. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. Happy Boxing Day to anybody with a British background. And I start counting the 12 days of Christmas because I'm one of the few people left who celebrates Epiphany, January 6th, because I always think it's cool to get to have an epiphany. And in the interest of the season and the topic of our interview today, which I am so excited about, I just want to share my screen for a second. There is a teaching that during some of his so-called lost years, pardon all my background notes, but that Master Jesus spent some time in India, and the original of this image is in a monastery in the Himalayas. And what I just love about this image is that as he is meditating out in the forest, he's surrounded by animals, including animals that some people are afraid of and animals that some people disregard. But all that love coming from him is radiating out and kind of depicting for me that Isaiah prophecy and the world that we really want to have. Now, it is interestingly enough, this Jesus that cares so deeply about animals, who is the one discovered by our guest today, Keith Akers, in the extensive research that he did for two of his books, The Lost Religion of Jesus and Disciples, How Jewish Christianity Shaped Jesus and Shattered the Church. Welcome from Denver, Colorado, Keith Akers.
Hi, Victoria. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to be with you. Oh my goodness, we have known each other a really, really long time. And you know, in some churches, they do kind of public confession during the service. So I'm going to do one of those. I am really upset that I only get 22 minutes to talk to this man. Because he has so much to share. Keith, I could talk with you on this topic until next Christmas, but we've got 22 minutes. So let's start with why this became a passion of yours. You spent literally decades looking at the historical Jesus. What started that?
Well, what started it was, first of all, I became a vegetarian. Then I became a vegan, and I was raised as a Christian. So I said, "Oh, I wonder what Christianity has to say about religion, about animals and vegetarianism and things like that." And as you know, I wrote a book, a vegetarian source book, and one of the chapters in there is a chapter on Christianity. And this topic came up, and I didn't know quite what to do with it because I found all these things in the New Testament that seemed actually to be rather antagonistic towards vegetarianism. And Paul says things like, eat anything sold in the meat market without raising any questions of conscience. Of course, questions of conscience is exactly what I wanted to do. So I decided to look into it further.
So as you did, what did you start to see?
Well, I saw a number of things. The one thing I saw was a book that is totally obscure, in which I think I'm probably the only one here that's even read it, possibly who's heard of it, called Jewish Christianity, Factional Disputes in the Early Church. And it was written by Hans Joachim Scherps, who's a German Jewish scholar. And he did all this research on Jewish Christianity. And he said that vegetarianism was indeed a very important part of the early church. And so I started looking at Jewish Christianity as a distinct thing, which I hadn't even heard of previously. And this was the followers of Jesus who both identified as Jews and followed the law, the Jewish law, as interpreted by Jesus, and also followed Jesus as they understood him. And they were vegetarians. And so I said, oh, well, these are the people I need to look at.
So give us a little background. There were groups of Jews who were vegetarian at the time of Jesus?
Well, certainly, and the Jewish Christians were not the only ones. There was the Essenes. There was probably a group called the Nazareans, which actually is the group that I believe Jesus actually directly emerged from. And they were both vegetarians. They were all vegetarians. And the Essenes are described in the Josephus and Philo and various of the church fathers, and they're described as vegetarians. The Nazareans are only found in Epiphanius and in all the literature surrounding Jewish Christianity. They're not. It's not the same as Nazarenes, and this is a issue which comes up. Another obscure point which I got deeply into as I deepened my study. But the Nazareans were also against animal sacrifice and were vegetarians.
So talk with us a little bit about animal sacrifice. I was just rereading some parts of both your books today, and you state that really it was Jesus going into the temple and doing what he did that precipitated the crucifixion. So this was a big deal. Why do you think he was really there, and what was he trying to do?
Well, the animal sacrifice business in Jerusalem was actually probably the key part of the economy. It was a big business. There were some archaeologists who did some research. They looked at the bones of the animals. They found some of the bones that were sacrificed of the animals that were sacrificed, and they came from all over the area. So it's like the local animals weren't enough. They had to actually bring in animals and especially at the Passover, this would have been a huge increase in local business for the Jerusalem temple. The temple in those days was nothing like a synagogue or a church or any kind of religious place of worship, which we think of today. It was more like a butcher shop or a slaughterhouse, because this is where you brought the animals that you wanted to sacrifice and present to the priests.
So was this always a part of the tradition, or was it inserted at some point?
Well, you asked me, I'd say it was inserted at some point. And of course, if you talk to different scholars, you get different interpretations. But I think the animal sacrifice business is something that came in. It was quite old, but it came in much later than Moses, that's for sure. And they had to put they had to put in all the instructions about animal sacrifice into Moses' instructions, so that it would sound like it was really, really ancient. And this is the view that the Ebionites were a Jewish Christian, the main Jewish Christian view, main Jewish Christian group. And the Ebionites had this idea that there were false teachings inserted into the scriptures. The scriptures were not just the word of God, pure and simple, but were actually had been falsified. And
So
no,
go ahead.
Yeah, and some of the falsifications, obviously the most important ones from the point of view of the Ebionites, were specifically the instructions about animal sacrifice.
So when most of us who went to Sunday school or catechism class, we had the idea that Jesus was just really not into capitalism. He went in there to overturn those money changers. He didn't like they were making the temple a quote den of thieves. But you have information that it was really a lot more about the sacrifice itself. Tell us about that and where that idea comes from.
Well, you can get it straight out of the New Testament. I hear this is what John says: the Jesus disruption of the animal sacrifice business is one of the few incidents that's in all four of the Gospels. And this is what it says in John: the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple, he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers at their business. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all with the sheep and oxen out of the temple, and he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things away. You shall not make my Father's house a house of trade." So certainly he was against capitalism, and he was to do something that was destructive to the economic order of the day. But that economic order was doing something very specific. Namely, it was making money off the systematic slaughter of animals as a religious observance.
So your point is really good that he opposed animal sacrifice, and you also offer a lot of historic data that he was not the only one. There were a lot of people in a lot of Jewish sects that opposed the temple system and the animal sacrifice. But does that really go so far as to say that he also opposed eating meat, and specifically what we always hear about, eating fish?
Yes. Well, the Ebionites were very clear on this. They said we are vegetarians. We don't eat meat. Eating meat is same as worshiping demons. If you eat, then in fact that allows the demons to take you over if you start eating meat and becoming engaged in all kinds of things of manner of violence. Now, in the early church, there's a dispute between Paul and the other apostles, James, Peter, and John, over this very question as to whether vegetarianism is part of the gospel message, whether vegetarianism is something that Christians should participate in. And in fact, the message from James, at least, who was a vegetarian, in fact, probably vegan, was that, yes, it's incompatible with Christianity to eat animals that were killed, whether they're sacrificed or not. And if you look at the letters of Paul, and this goes back to some of the verses that I found so troubling when I found out, when I first started investigating this, like when Paul says, eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience. Well, why is he talking about this? Why is he spending Romans 14 and 1 Corinthians 8 through 10 talking about all this business? It's because animal sacrifice and vegetarianism were very closely connected. And I think there's a practical reason why this is so. And that is, the practical reason is that for most people who were vegetarian 99% of the time, or vegan 99% of the time anyway, the only real temptation to eat meat was at festival times, either pagan festivals when they sacrificed an oxen, or at the Jewish festivals, where at Passover when they would sacrifice animals. This was your big chance for the common person to eat meat. Most people in the ancient world, except for the 1%, except for the very top, the very elite, they were the only ones who would even think about going in to a meat market to purchase meat. And when Paul says, eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, really, he's talking to the 1%. He's not talking to the same people that were in Jesus' circle, the people that Jesus preached to, who are mostly the poor, the oppressed, the people in the lost sheep of the house of Israel, as it is put in the Gospels.
So, Keith, let's talk about this fish thing. I mean, we've all had Christian friends say, but Jesus ate fish, and a lot of the apostles were fishermen. So how far are we going to go with that one?
Yeah, as far as you want, I suppose. I'm not sure the rest of it. I think 22 minutes probably wouldn't quite cut it. The quick answer is that these stories are probably later insertions. Most of them don't show Jesus eating fish at all, and they're rather suspect for other reasons as well. Fish is a very common symbol in early Christianity, because the word fish in Greek, which is something like ichthus, is an acronym that in Greek stands for Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. And people often spoke symbolically about fish in this way. I think Tertullian says that now when we're that we little fishes want to become like our big fish, Jesus Christ, when we're baptized, things like that. And so I think it was probably intended symbolically. And the very earliest versions of these fish stories are without fish. You see these same stories in the church fathers, in the early church fathers, the pre-Nicene fathers before the Council of Nicaea. And in these stories, Jesus only distributes the bread to the 5,000. And the fish isn't there at all. In fact, Jesus at one point even himself refers in the Gospels back, and he says, "Don't you remember when I fed the fish? Don't you remember when I fed the bread to the 5,000 and all the pieces that were picked up afterwards?" He doesn't mention the fish. So I think the fish is clearly a later addition.
That is so interesting. I know that Rin Berry, the historian, said that when he translated the New Testament from the Greek, he found that the word in the story of the so-called loaves and fishes, that the word for fish was a different word. Instead of this regular word for fish, it was something that translated as either a spread like a relish or desserts. Third definition, little fishes. So I think of that as the miracle of the loaves and tahini. So you want to take a stab at after the resurrection, somebody gave him a piece of fish?
Sure, I'll do that. The first thing is this passage is clearly made up after the fact because it's directed against Marcion. Marcion was an early Christian heretic. He was a Gnostic. He believed that Jesus did not incarnate physically at all. He was never a physical body. He was just sort of a spirit or a ghost who moved around Palestine, teaching people to be good or whatever. And so this passage is specifically directed at him. It says that only after when he appears to the disciples and they still don't believe, then he says, give me something to eat. And then he says, no ghost or spirit could take and eat something like this, because in those days it was believed that a spirit could not eat anything. And so eating something would prove that Jesus was not a spirit. And in fact, this is almost certainly directed against Marcion. It specifically addresses his concerns. This controversy doesn't even occur in the early church. Everybody knows that Jesus is a physical body. This wouldn't have even occurred to the first disciples or even to the first generation following Jesus. Marcion is born in the year 80. So this is very, very late.
Fascinating. We have a couple of notes. Mark, and I believe this is Mark Bronstein, author of Radical Vegetarianism, says they stopped fishing, meaning the apostles, I believe. And Paula says, isn't the Aramaic word for fish and seaweed very similar? So thanks for those comments. So Keith, you spoke earlier about Jewish Christians, which is a phase that I'll bet most Christians and most Jews are not familiar with. So tell us about them and this movement.
Yes, Jewish Christianity is a label which scholars have put on it. It's not a very good term, and it has, first of all, it has nothing to do with Jews for Jesus or anything like that. That's a modern movement, which is actually totally different from ancient Jewish Christianity, completely opposite. But the main Jewish Christian group was the Ebionites, but there are also some other groups such as the Nazareans and the Essenes and the Elkozaites. So there are various, and you could investigate those at great depth. They were all vegetarians. They were all vegetarians and believed that vegetarianism was part of their essential message. They followed Jesus, but Jesus as an interpreter of the Jewish law, the law that casts out the false teachings in the Old Testament.
I see. And Mark has said it's Mark Sullivan. So Mark Sullivan, who did not write Radical Vegetarianism, but thank you so much for the comment. So
these comments, by the way, are pretty accurate also, I will say.
Great, wonderful. Mark says, I had the privilege of communicating with Keith when he was writing Disciples. Very cool. So Keith, I have read about early Christians and some of the church fathers who were very definitely vegetarian. Do you have a sense of why this was so important to them? They had so much else to worry about, being persecuted and fed to lions and whatnot. Why would they stick to this tenet as well? It just seems so beautiful, but so difficult for them.
Yes. Well, they stuck to this tenet because it was part of their religion. Most people in the early church were vegetarians. They didn't think about why. The controversy about Paul and it only comes in when it starts branching out into the upper classes of Rome. And this is one of the reasons Christianity was successful, was when it went into the upper classes. And the question is whether it should be required. But Augustine, who's not a vegetarian, remarks in the 5th century that the number of vegetarian Christians who are vegetarian is without number, meaning Orthodox Christians is without number. Of course, the Ebionites were entirely vegetarian. So I think it's sort of consonant also with the idea of the poor, because the one teaching of Jesus, which does seem to be accurately represented in early Christianity, is the teachings towards the poor, which comes down even to the present day. And this is what the poor were eating. They were eating vegetarian. Almost everyone who was in the lower and even the middle classes of ancient Rome, to the extent that there were middle classes, was vegetarian just because there wasn't very much meat available in the first place, and only for the rich.
Yes. So we're getting down under the wire. Paula has asked, and if you could answer this quickly, because I have one more question too. If you think that the Gospel of the Holy 12 is authentic.
No, I don't think so. I think it's this is a later development. I've forgotten. There's a whole bunch of modern sort of gospels that were developed, and actually some of it is probably is hodgepodge taken from the New Testament. So that part might be, but generally no. And you can look at my blog. I've written a couple of blogs on this on my website where I discuss this in some detail. But I think it's mostly from the 19th or early 20th century.
And what is your blog, Keith, so people can find you?
Oh, it's compassionatespirit.com, and it's just like it sounds. Compassionate Spirit, all one word, .com.
Beautiful. And the question that I was going to ask you that you probably don't have time to answer because we have a minute and a few seconds left, but maybe we could address this in our breakout rooms later, and hopefully some lucky people will be in a breakout room with you. And that is what we do now. What we who either are Christian or know a lot of Christians, how we explain why our veganism is compatible with that belief. So actually, we do have 40 seconds. You want to give it 40 seconds?
In 40 seconds, I'd say that this is a problem. It's a $64,000 question, or probably $64 million, and I don't have the answer. I've not been able to find any group within Christianity that really gives voice to my concerns. They'll tolerate my vegetarianism, but they don't really get that it's part. I think that it's part of the gospel message, and so that's one reason why I think the Compassion Consortium is such a wonderful group, because people who still sort of have a soft spot in their heart for Jesus, but can't handle Christianity, which is basically me, that you can have some place to go.
That is beautiful. And it is exactly 22 minutes, which is a Christmas miracle. And passing that along, I believe Reverend Erica has some compassion in action to share with us.
Yes, thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Keith. Very fascinating. Before we move on, this is our moment of stretching. So check in with your body. You've been sitting for a little while. Give yourself some stretches. If you want to be inspired by your favorite animals as you're stretching, you can do that. You want to look around at other people in the video as you're stretching. That's always a fun thing to do. Get some twists in. The last time we get to do this year. So really enjoy it. Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. I am very excited to bring you our next segment, our Compassion in Action segment. And this is really where we source from our community some people who are doing things in their daily lives that show what compassion in action looks like. And we bring them on and we talk with them, and we all get a little inspired by what they're doing. So today I'm very excited to introduce you to and show a video of Marion Haley Moss. So Marion came to New York City from her hometown in Seattle, Washington. She was an actress on the Broadway stage, but is best known for her role as Brenda in the movie Lovers and Other Strangers. Then, as some actors tend to do, she became a psychotherapist. and now she is writing children's books about kindness to animals and the benefits of a vegan diet. She self-publishes, along with Mark Shavlin, the Parisian illustrator, under the name Kindness Books. Her books have been used as teaching tools in PETA's programs, Teach Kind, also by chlorophyll.org, and in Africa by Elephantopia. She has had a 6-part interview and reading of her book, Mother Nature's Secret, which you'll be able to see behind her screen here on Zoom, on the Supreme Master Television. And her books are now being sold at United Poultry Concerns, chlorophyll.org, Skylands Animal Sanctuary and Rescue, Goatlandia, and on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So Phil, if you will go ahead and bring up the video, we want to give you a quick overview of some of Marian's. This is her collection of books. So we'll play that and then we'll have a chat with Marian. Awesome. Well, welcome, Marian. As you know, this is a little bit of a shorter segment, so we'd love to just hear from you, maybe a few bits about what inspired you to go from actress to psychotherapist and now this children's author. What brought that about in your life?
Well, I guess it's just fate, but I first want to thank you so much for inviting me here. The 15 to 20 books are basically different ways of saying, be kind to animals and adopt a vegan diet, all different ways. I came to all this quite late in life. For 50 years, you could say, lived in a meat and potatoes world. And then one fateful day in 1993, a friend of mine, Cynthia Crisp, invited me to an evening with her co-host, Stephen Gerard, who, by the way, was one of 2 people to introduce quinoa to America. Well, he cooked a vegetarian dinner, and they showed a video of Supreme Master Shanghai speaking to the people who were working at the UN. And I just felt awesome because I had never seen a living spiritual master. And so I asked my friend, I'd love to do the meditation that she's talking about, the light and sound, but why do we have to be vegetarian? She said, well, try it and see. Well, I did try it and see, and everything changed. For some reason, I was able to make connections that I had never made before. And the big connection at that time was that my beloved steaks and hot dogs and hamburgers and my baked potato oozing with sour cream and butter, they didn't come from a restaurant or from a grocery store. They came from living, innocent beings who wanted to live and deserved to live as much as I did. Then in around 2007, another connection was made that still is in force today. And that is that the meat industry, the dairy industry, and the egg industry was feeding climate change. And Master Shanghai was in anguish as to, she was alarmed as to what climate change was doing to our planet and what it could do. So she started a 24/7 TV show by satellite, and it aired positive news to have a more peaceful world. And some of her followers opened up loving huts, vegan restaurants all over the world. There are 200 of them now. And I was inspired to write children's books. I never wrote anything before, but I don't know, meditating and being inspired does wonderful things. So along with Mark Chavan, who is another inspiration, I mean, it's so exciting to see your ideas blossom into these pictures, you know, so I just kept going. And we have about 15 to 20 books now. Oh gosh, I don't know what else to tell you.
Such a beautiful story, Marian. Thank you.
well,
And just thank you for being so open to allowing your life to change. And
Here's our newest book, the last one. It's The Bravest Tree. It was inspired by all the wildfires, which are, of course, fed by climate change. So actually, you know, we don't have to do television shows or write books or open restaurants. All we have to do is encourage our friends to change what's on our plate, do what comes natural 3 times a day, change what's on there to a plant-based diet. And in doing so, we save 1 animal a day, because that's pretty important when you think that there are 80 billion animals killed every year in the United States alone.
so powerful. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Thanks for coming on and for sharing all of this with us. If anyone's looking for a last minute gift and you know young people in your life, take a look at Miriam's books and be inspired like we all are. Thank you so much.
You can find them on my website.
Okay.
And you can download them for free, or you can buy them at Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
Tell us your website and we'll put that in the comments.
Oh, okay. MarianHaleyMoss.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Miriam. All right, Rev Sarah, over to you for our prayers and blessings.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Keith, Victoria, William, Phil, everybody who has gotten us this far today. So, on my trip to Galapagos last month, I stumbled across a life-size nativity scene, which included Mary, Joseph, Jesus, and a sea turtle, a flamingo, a sea lion, and a blue-footed booby, who's another bird. So we've been full on birds today. And I almost missed the bus because I was so enthralled with this interspecies nativity scene. And so for today, we're going to be doing an interspecies nativity scene. And it reminded me that although Jesus is the center of the Christmas focus for many, many people, most creche sets are interspecies. During December, I have a soapstone set that shows up from Kenya that has camels. I have an old German version that's full of sheep, and one from Peru that has plentiful alpaca. So who was really at the first Christmas? Well, this should be no surprise after Keith's presentation talking about additions and changes and ways that scripture was written, but we don't actually know. We don't have a video, we don't have YouTube, we don't have firsthand interviews of who was there. We have stories and we have traditions that humans have handed down over millennia. The book of Matthew suggests that wise men showed up, and so we get camels. And the book of Luke doesn't have any magi, but it has shepherds, and so we get sheep. And so today what I want to do is invite all of you to choose who's going to show up in our nativity. Because at its basis, a nativity scene is about compassion. It's about care. Mary and Joseph cared for their little fragile one. They wrap him and place him a train. Hold on. They place Jesus in somewhere that is safe for him. It's safe for his health. It's safe from the political troubles of his day. It's safe so that he can live. So today we're creating our own scene. And as I place it together physically, Phil, I'm going to ask you to do two things. The first thing is to make sure, I'm not sure if I am spotlit yet. I'm still seeing Erica on speaker view. Fabulous, thank you. And the second is to open up the chat. As you all know, we have mindful chat during our services so that we can stay single pointed and so that we can soak in. But now we open it up so that we can bring your voices into the room. And so as I place the nativity together physically, I'd like you into chat to add anyone that you'd like to add. And we'd first like to add today Desmond Tutu and his family. He just passed today. And so we'd like to invite him into the safety of our nativity. And I invite you to enter any names of folks who, of any type, human or other beings, who we will center around this light, the light at the center of our nativity. I invite canines to our nativity. I invite sheep. Oh, all the sheep who are exploited into our nativity. I invite gatos into our nativity. Invite turtles into our nativity. And I invite this little swimming and finned one from the Galapagos, who I think is ready for Pride already in December, into our nativity. And we take a deep breath, knowing that they are here, that they are here with our care, that they are here with our concern. We invite all of the names that have come into the chat. We invite Aunt Alma. We invite Luca and Kitty and Mrs. Thay, Beth, Simone, Mike, Carolyn, all of these names, all of the animals trapped in the wildfires. So many deserving ones. Please invite the chickens, the most exploited beings on the planet. I use my fancy clergy words. Hell yes, invite the chickens and the roosters and the cows and the goats. All birds, yes, yes. Anyone who is struggling. To Lori, lobsters. Oh yes, all of the dear lobsters, sentient beings who can feel and don't deserve to be dropped into hot pots. All of these into and wrapped in our manger of safety, our manger of care, our manger of compassion. If you would all take a deep breath with me. Take a look at the beings gathered here, as well as the beings of spirit who we have gathered in and who continue to flow into our chat. I'm going to ask you all to share along with me, invoking the holy that we know by so many names and in so many ways. May all creatures everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of our lives contribute to this happiness and this freedom for all. May it be so. Amen. So mote it be. And so it is. And if I missed your closing word, feel free to add it. Thank you all for practicing blessings and prayers with me. And I think we're back over to William.
Yes, that was very beautiful, Sarah. Thank you. So we want to thank you for joining us today. And we also want to let you know about some upcoming services and events. On January 23rd, we hope you'll join us for our Sunday service with guest Kathy Freston, a New York Times bestselling author of multiple health and wellness books, notably 72 Reasons to be Vegan, Quantum Wellness, and Clean Protein. Her advocacy for a more healthy, sustainable, and just food system is inspired by her concern for human health as well as animal and environmental welfare. Then on February 15th, we're going to have a special event. So Tuesday, February 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we are going to feature the new film, They're Trying to Kill Us. This is a new documentary focusing on food justice issues through the lens of hip hop and urban culture. We'll be joined by producers Keegan Kuhn, who was producer of Cowspiracy and What the Health, and John Lewis, also known as Badass Vegan. They're Trying to Kill Us provokes critical discussion and thought about food justice as Lewis interviews hip hop artists, medical experts, activists, scientists, and even animal farmers and former slaughterhouse workers about injustice in all its forms. The film delves into topics rarely discussed by politicians or reported on by the mainstream media, including nutritional racism, diet-related diseases, government corruption, environmental racism, and the exploitation of both consumers and workers in the animal agriculture industry. So please join us if you can. So lastly, if you enjoyed our service today, we are always willing to accept donations, and we would encourage you to donate on our website at the link that is posted in the chat box. And now, Sarah, I think it's back to you.
Thank you, William. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today at Compassion Consortium. Thank you to Keith. Thank you to Marianne. You might remember way back at the beginning of today's Sunday service, there were a couple of questions that came up in that song of compassion. And here's what those questions were. What do you want to change? What can deepen and support your resolve? And how does belonging to this community, or can belonging to this community, help? And I'll add a fourth one now that we're a little further into our service. How would you like to help this community thrive?